Actually, we are working. I am working with Professor Chen in this regard. And Professor Gan, he visited. This is our Buriganga River and tower, very good tower. And actually, maybe now second home is China. And this is in my Japan life, my PhD supervisor, Professor Masaki Tabata, his physicist, Professor Ueno in Chiba University. I had a very good chance to learn physics, fundamental physics on organic semiconductor. And Professor Hirooka of University of Yamanashi. He taught me and the mass spectrometry and Professor Matsunaga with him on Tokyo or with his team on SIMS, secondary and mass spectrometry. Thank you for your attention. This is our old chemistry building established in 1921. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any query, any question, please welcome to know. Actually, this is a little bit, this is the real scenario in Bangladesh. Actually, we need to solve some problems.
Any participant want to make any question, please? I think no questions, sir. I just checked YouTube also. I think no question.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you again.
Just one minute. Okay. Sir, thank you for your nice deliberation, and we must appreciate certificate of appreciation to you, sir, for giving your time, valuable time with us to spend your valuable thoughts on waste management. It is not waste management actually. You describe all the events of shipyard to computer waste and then oil seepage. Many aspects you have covered, as well as how the society is affected, the health of the common people. So thank you once again, sir, for spending your valuable time and sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you, sir. Please.
Okay,
accept.
thank you, Professor Poddar. I do hope we can publish again one more paper soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Taking much time, I want to invite our next speaker. Madam Shubhatra Sen. As I told already our description, so no need to again talk about her. And she is at present President of Sheva in Department of Botany, Ashutosh College, under University of Calcutta. And now I request Madam Subhatra Sen to give her deliberation on sustainability through green psychology, combating climate change. Madam, please.
Visible? Is the screen visible? Is the screen visible and am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kothari. So here is my topic, sustainability through green psychology, combating climate change. So the issue is climate change, and we have to consider, not only consider, but we have to take serious action in combating it. So the tagline is reimagine, recreate, restore. And this was the theme of the World Environment Day in 2021. And we talk of restoration of the ecosystem. We talk of restoration because due to negative anthropogenic interference, we have brought about a lot of undesirable changes in the climate. And the United Nations Decade for Ecosystem Restoration, this will continue from this year, 2021, till 2030. This is the United Nations Decade. And 2030 is also, incidentally, the deadline for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So by 2030, we have a very clear idea of what we wish to do about the climate. And so climate change is for people and for this planet. We have to restore this planet and our habitat. And we see with the existing pandemic of COVID-19 that it has really become a very serious health issue. And not only a health issue, but it has become a general human and socio-economic crisis. So this is also the decade of action, because we've had a lot of discussions, we've had a lot of plans, we've talked of executions and a lot of things, but now it is the action decade, and we need to take action on 3 levels. That is on the global level, on the local level, and on the people level. So global action, we need to be aware and we need to take action globally, locally, where the local institutions and the regulatory bodies, the local governments, the cities, they need to participate, and the people, at the individual level, they need to take action. So here we are. And we talk of Greta Thunberg, the climate activist, the climate change activist. And no, discussion on climate change is ever complete without mentioning Greta Thunberg, who says, I want you to act. This being the decade of action, she insists on saying that I want you to act as you would in a crisis. So this is one of a unique crisis which is created by man and which has to be solved by man himself. I want you to act as if the house is on fire. And our house is really on fire because it is our planet which is on fire. And so here we are, involving all sectors. When we talk of sustainability, we talk of the common area among environment, society, and economy. We talk of the common area, that is the area which is common to the environment, the society, and the economy. And on the other hand, we have the academia, the segment that I represent, the teaching community, the researchers, and the community. And the common area to these three will have to address the problems of sustainability. So as we see, climate change is a cross-sectoral issue. This is beyond the individual water, energy, health, agriculture, or biodiversity crisis. This is a cross-sectoral issue, meaning that people from all sectors have to be involved to address this particular issue. And so we talk of sustainability, and we know that Silent Spring, the book by Rachel Carson, published in 1962, this was an epic on the condition of our planet. But much before that, it was the author Fairfield Osborn in 1948, as early as 1948. And the book was called Our Plundered Planet. And this was perhaps the first to talk about environmental degradation. Though this was not as much hyped as Silent Spring by Rachel Carson, yet Our Plundered Planet was the first book which spoke of sustainability without actually using the term. And so we now come to this area of green psychology, where we realize that a lot of the things that we do, the lot of anti-environment activities that we carry out are largely due to our behavior. And behavior, human behavior, is influenced by the environment. It is, a reciprocal relationship. The environment affects human behavior, and in turn, the environment is affected by human behavior. So how is human behavior affected? The buildings, the landscape around us, the people around us, the sound, everything around us will influence the way we behave. So if things around us are calm and quiet, if there is greenery, if there is serenity, we choose to behave in a disciplined and in a pro-environmental manner. If, on the other hand, there is a crowd, there is pushing, there is an upsurge in population and pollution, human behavior will tend to go out of hand. So we find that the environment, whether it be natural, whether it is the natural environment, or whether it is the man-made environment, this has a significant effect on the feelings that humans have, the behavior that they portray. It will affect their general health, and it will finally or ultimately influence the productivity. That is the work that they do. So our surroundings need to be extremely optimum for us to behave in the right manner. So the environmental problems that we see around us, of waste just my previous speaker spoke of e-wastes. He sort of highlighted a lot of issues on waste management. And these are really problems of human behavior, man's attitude, their approach, the collective human actions, and of course, their thoughts, their beliefs, and the values. So you see that most of the environmental attitudes that we show or have are actually, due to the environment which has modified us to behave in that particular manner. So if there is pro-environmental behavior, we would be more environment friendly. If there is dirt, if there is pollution, if there is unprecedented, population, if there is, a lot of unhealthiness about the way people are talking and they are unleashed in the language that they use, if there is sound pollution, if there is air pollution, if there is water pollution, you cannot expect a healthy individual to exist in those circumstances. So we are the product of our environment. And so how can environmental quality be improved? That is what green psychology says. We can bring about, behavioral changes, because it is ultimately man's behavior which needs to be targeted to bring about any significant change in the environment. So we have to select that behavior. We have to condition our surroundings in such a manner that each individual is prompted to behave in a pro-environmental manner. So we have to seek for those interventions. If you find that loud music is threatening to your work, if you find that the quarrel that is going on around you or heated arguments are proving detrimental, then you just have to learn to do away with all that. You have to shut out that. You have to either move to a place where you find some peace and tranquility, and thereby that improves your behavior and ultimately it enhances your productivity. So that is the target of green psychology. So individuals, if they are intervened in the proper manner, you can achieve long-term environmental sustainability, because this is what we are driving at ultimately, to achieve long-term environmental sustainability. And we can do this by environmental interventions, by changing the environment that causes a human to behave in an anti-environmental manner. So if the environment can be modified, human behavior will also change. So here we are. If we use green psychology, then we get to know that what factors of the environment are bringing about non-sustainable behavior. We get to know why a child or an adult or a particular individual is going around disturbing the balance of the ecosystem. We can identify the barriers, and thereby we can work on the barriers. We can intervene there. The psychologists can intervene there to promote sustainable behavior. We can think of strategies for bringing about such changes, because it will not be all at once. You cannot, just work magic. It will not be utopia all of a sudden. So we need to think of strategies. We need to improve the communication between the experts and the legislatures, the people who are working on this, and we need to convey this to the planners. And ultimately, this will contribute to policy development and implementation. So the goal of green psychology or eco-psychology or environmental psychology, call it what you may, will ultimately be to create, to manage, to protect and restore environment. And we are talking of ecological restoration in this decade. So this could be a very useful tool in addressing the problems. We could diagnose the problem situations, the problem environment, and then recommend the solutions. So we know already from our experience of Yash, Bangladesh and India, we have experienced, Yash, the tropical cyclones this year. The people of the coastal area have been greatly affected. And so also, the people whose livelihoods depend, and these tropical cyclones have been deadly, to say the least. Yes, this year. We had Amphan last year. In fact, for the last decade, we find that nature has been devastating. And of course, many of us remember the Orissa cyclone of 1999. But the last decade has been particularly very threatening in terms of tropical cyclones. And we have seen many environmental disasters. And so we know that nature has the power to disrupt lives. It can sort of just, create a disaster. And at the same time, it is also a healing agent. So we need to tackle with this very crucial aspect in a very sensible manner. It is that one thing that can destroy. It is also that one thing that can restore. So global climate change, we can understand how the risks of global climate change occur, the risks of global climate change, and how people are understanding those risks and how they are responding to the risk of global climate change. So we can understand the risks of climate change. We can then clarify and identify the interrelations between the individual and the contextual. That is, the individual belief, the attitude, the approach, the value, and also the existing context. That is the structural, the social, and the cultural pattern of the society. That would drive, many things like population growth, like the economic condition, and also the environmental situation. So, green psychology or eco-psychology, in its role in controlling global climate change, would aspire to describe behaviorally based links. There is a link between population growth. You can connect all these because population growth will lead, unprecedented population growth would lead to unprecedented consumption. And when consumption is unleashed, there would be economic crisis. There would be climate change. We could identify the psychosocial impacts, the social impacts, the psychology influencing society, the psychosocial impacts of climate change. And also there would be influences at the emotional, cognitive, and the behavioral responses. So it's an interlinked web. Climate change will also significantly affect another aspect. That would be the stress factor in human lives. So what it is, an anticlimax, because climate change has largely been brought about by human interference, by negative human interference. And now human beings don't know how to deal with what they have themselves created. So human beings have to learn how to cope with this stress that they themselves have created. And they have to identify the structural, the cultural, the emotional barriers which are stopping them from having the ideal environment, which are stopping them from having the desired environment, and they themselves have to find or propose methods for overcoming them. So you see, there lies, the anticlimax. He has created the problem. He himself is the sufferer of what he has created, and he also has to find the solution to that problem. So from that, he has to bring about models of behaviors. He has to sort of form a behavioral model. He has to construct a behavioral model that can bring about positive climate change. All this while it has been negative, but now it has to be positive anthropogenic interference. And he has to design something that is pro-environment. He has to design something that works in favor of the environment. Then there is also the task of understanding public and organizational behavior. So it is not only his own individual behavior that he has to consider, but there is also the social task of the public in general, the different organizations which are functioning. So there has to be the designing of effective technologies and information systems. All these must drive to respond to pro-environmental change, something that works for the environment instead of going against it. So now we are facing this pandemic, COVID-19, and we know that COVID-19 itself is an outcome of unprecedented climate change. We have destroyed land, there has been habitat fragmentation, there is uncontrolled deforestation, there is conversion of forests to agricultural zones because of tremendous population explosion. There is, the loss of forest area. So we now have to consider reversing those changes, because since we have brought about these undesirable changes, we have introduced such zoonotic diseases like COVID-19 to this planet. And it is because of, such habitat destruction and habitat fragmentation that has released diseases like COVID-19. And we have also been warned by environmentalists, we have been warned by the people, the medical practitioners, by the researchers of medical science, that if we do not have enough respect for the environment, if we do not seriously consider in its restoration, we would have to be prepared for further pandemics beyond COVID-19. So that is something that is terrible. We are already sort of, struggling to cope with this pandemic. And if this pandemic is just the beginning of a series of pandemics due to climate change, then, well, human existence is definitely at stake. And so comes the question of green combat. I have already spoken about green psychology, which is working for the environment, for bringing about positive behavioral changes that could reverse the negative environmental influences around us. So we now speak of how we can use this green combat further. And during this COVID period, I tried to carry out, some survey work from home because we were all working from home. And I tried to carry out some survey work. And that survey revealed that urban dwellers who had access to green space, that is greenery, that was not much, just about 55%. And they enjoyed better health. So people, the urban dwellers who had access to green spaces, though they were smaller, they were not a very large percentage, but they enjoyed better health during this pandemic. And people who encouraged gardening, lived in green surroundings, and who had a healthy outdoor that is with respect to a green environment, have better health during this COVID situation. And you can make out from these figures that a large percentage of people felt extremely restless and gloomy during the lockdown. People who were not exposed to greenery. But those exposed to green spaces, be it their own small garden, be it their rooftop garden, their terrace garden, their small kitchen garden, or their indoor plants, they felt a sense of peace and calm even during this very morbid state of pandemic. So the Green Combat also found, my findings, I also found that it was interesting that people spent or preferred to spend more than their usual time with plants during this lockdown period. So definitely they felt a certain calmness. They felt that they could handle it better if they were amidst greenery. So this had a restorative effect on their system. And it was something very much within our power, because if green plants restore or maintain our mental peace and calm, we can try doing that. We can have our own balcony garden or a rooftop garden. We can have certain indoor plants. We can have our small kitchen garden. Even if you have a small windowsill, you can cultivate certain plants there. And that can help, in combating our stress and anxiety during this pandemic period. So there were emotional benefits of houseplants to nearly 74% of the participants. And 55% of the respondents, they said that they wished for more plants. They wished for more greenery during this difficult period. And at the same time, my survey also revealed that people who had no indoor plants and who were, deprived of the natural light, they experienced negative emotions. So this is what you call, having stress and anxiety due to adverse environmental conditions. And they experience feelings of anxiety, fear, and stress more frequently. And they felt, many people, 63% felt that when conditions return to normal, they would wish to spend more time with their plants, or they wish to have more plants in their surroundings. So for green homes, for greener homes, we all have maybe a few plants at home. But I could suggest a few plants to you which could help. For instance, the spider plant. It's one of the easiest plants. It's almost a zero maintenance plant, and it is a rich supplier of oxygen. It spreads happy vibes. It is an easy plant to maintain at home. And of course, we all know of basil. Basil is now very popular. Basil is now very, very popular. So we could have basil at home. This sort of helps us to partly remove, if not the whole. I cannot recommend that it will fully remove your anxiety and stress, but you will be in a better mental disposition. The snake plant, Dracaena. Yes, this is considered highly efficient, also commonly called the mother-in-law's tongue. This is again a very easy plant, very easy indoor plant to have. You could have this. I'm insisting on indoor plants because most of the time we are now confined at home. Even in workplaces, we don't mix much. So we are all sort of restricted to our homes and to our rooms. So if you have a healthy environment there, it is an individual advantage, and globally also it becomes a significant contribution to climate change. Jasmine, it has a wonderful fragrance. And the Journal of Biological Chemistry, it was a very interesting finding which said that it is the fragrance of jasmine which is as soothing as Valium. We all know that Valium is a nerve soother. We take it to soothe our nerves. And the fragrance of jasmine, it can be as soothing as Valium. And jasmine is a wonderful plant to have at home. The next being lavender. Again, colorful and with a beautiful fragrance, commonly used in aromatherapy because it has a very beautiful aroma, and it helps to combat feelings of depression, confusion, chaos, fatigue, headaches, etc. And these are all scientific works published in the journal, the Biopsychosocial Medicine Journal. So these are some recommendations that I have for your home, which you could have. And of course, the very, very famous aloe vera, which is good for skin, which is good for the air around you, which is an air purifier, and is, of course, useful for emitting oxygen at night. So we find that when we talk of sustainability, sustainable living has now undergone a lot of changes, So we now talk of not only an environment, but a flourishing environment. It is not only an environment that exists. We need to work on the environment to make it flourish, to make it more habitable. We need an equitable economy. It's just not the economy, but it must be an equitable economy. And finally, when these two, when they act in harmony, do you have a vibrant community? We are not looking for a community which is sick and diseased and scared and tensed and anxious. We are looking for a community which is extremely pro-environment, which thinks of a friendly economy, which thinks of a green economy, which is productive. And so only then, if you have all these, only then will you have a community that is vibrant. And finally, climate change is the single biggest thing that humans have ever done on this planet, because as I said, there lies the anticlimax. It is something that has been largely brought about by negative anthropogenic interference. So it is for us to now control it. The one thing that needs to be bigger must be our movement to stop it. And the time is now. If it is not now, it will never be. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, madam, for your useful thought and discussion with this. And there is a question in the chat box. How do we do you recommend cities and municipalities to have green space program?
Absolutely. This is a very, very important aspect, because we are now talking of smart cities. The smart city is not only technologically advanced, it is a city that is green and that is sustainable. So there must be, because you know, what is the problem with us? We have a city and then we talk of planting trees. But now the question is, the approach should be, when you plan something, you first plan where you plan to have a park or a garden or the green spaces. You plan for the urban green spaces, or you plan for the spaces, the green spaces first, along with your other, you know, technological and technical structures. Because a tree is not an afterthought. It has to come at the very beginning. That initiates the civilization. So it is very important for all planners to consider greening right at the beginning, rather than at the end of the whole process when the damage is done. So it is very important. It is mandatory now.
Thank you. I think the question is answered. And then another question is, how do we resolve solid waste and plastic waste, which are global problem? Let us discuss. I will discuss that one in my talk. And then Dr. Mitu Detel, excellent presentation. Okay. Thank you. And
thank you so much.
Thank you for your deliberation. And I just shared the screen. The certificate of appreciation to you, and of course you are the organizer, so your sign is there. Thank you, madam,
so
for being with us and deliver the nice talk.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And today, now I have the opportunity here to talk on this topic today. So I request Madam and Professor Hassan Habib to give me permission to start.
Of course, please. Carry on.
It's all yours.
Thank you. As all of us discussing today on the climate change and health, the main topic, I will tell means the same thing, climate change and social impact on climate change, both vice versa actually. And this is one of the United Nations 17 SDG goal. Goal number 13 is the climate action. And as you know, that all these goals are interrelated with each other. That number one is no poverty. Number two is, if there is hunger, there will be no good health. We cannot think about our health if we are hungry. So first we have to, means if we have no money, we cannot eat. If we cannot eat, we don't have good health, we cannot think about good education. So all these are interrelated to each other. So climate also one of the, of course, you can understand, we can understand that is